Perk is with us now. You wrote a column earlier this week, Perk, that McDaniel has to be gone after this season. There's nothing that can be done, right? In your opinion, there's nothing that can be done that's left to be done where you would say, you know what, this coach and this regime deserves another shot at it.
Well, look, if they duplicate the 2016 team, which was also 1-4 and made it to the playoffs and win a playoff game, then I will say okay. But from the start of this season, even last season, even in 2023, I was saying the measure of a successful season is winning a playoff game. In 2022, they already showed us they could make the playoffs. They showed us they could make the playoffs with 2 missing games. So now you have to go to the next step. You have to show us that you can win a playoff game. And now here we are, almost 3 seasons later, and 2+ seasons later, and you're not on track to make the playoffs. Not only that, your best game this season was probably that loss to Buffalo, right? I mean, you held on for that Jets game. And so I don't see progress. I don't see the cavalry coming because Tyreek is out for the season. Maybe James Daniels and Austin Jackson come back, but what is that going to do for you? This season is pretty much a lost cause. And the reason that I say that Mike can't come back next season as opposed to he should lose his job today, I think the players are still listening to Mike, okay? And so I think the players like Mike. I think the players respect Mike. But 1 more loss, 2 more losses, they're going to stop listening to Mike. And at that point, to me, that's when you need to make the change.
Did he have anything interesting to say at his press conference today? Was there anything that you came away with?
No, not really. I mean, he was the low-key Mike that he's been this season. The jokes aren't there because nothing's funny when you're 1-4. So he was the normal low-key Mike today that he's been all season. And, look, I like Mike. This is not a personal thing. This is business, right? That, you were given the best talent this organization has had in 2 decades, and you couldn't do anything with it. It's time for a change. But yeah, Mike was the same Mike today.
So, Perk, why Mike McDaniel? Or I guess let me ask it this way: we were talking earlier about who should go first, and I believe it's inevitable both will go, Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. Does it matter who ends up getting fired first? Do you feel like one needs to go before the other? Do you feel like they all have to go together? Does that process matter in your eyes?
It's rare that a GM gets fired mid-season. I think the Jets might have been the last team to do it a few years ago. Usually the coach goes mid-season and the GM goes, after the season. But I said in the column twice that Steve Ross needs to take a broom to this organization, meaning Grier, McDaniel, Tua, that you shouldn't bring any of them back because they've all shown that they're not good enough to get you where you need to get. And as far as Tua, look, you can take the Russell Wilson Denver approach, right, where you just take the financial pain, or you can take the Atlanta Kirk Cousins approach where you have him on the roster, but he's not the starter, and maybe you wait for a desperate team to come by and offer you a trade. But to me, none of these guys have shown, and they've had 3+ seasons together, that they can take you where you need to be. You should have a playoff win by now. I'm not saying that you should be at Kansas City level, but you should be at the Buffalo-Baltimore level. And it's important to point out that neither Josh Allen nor Lamar Jackson has been to a Super Bowl, right? So it's not like I'm saying they should be at some great level. They should be as good as those teams, and they're nowhere near those teams. So I think to get a clean start, you take all 3 of them out. And because I wouldn't want to bring in a new GM and say you have to have Mike McDaniel and Tua. I wouldn't want to have to bring in a new coach and say you got Chris Grier and Tua. If they want to keep Tua next season, if there's a new GM and a new coach, and if they want to keep Tua, that's fine. But to me, given Tua's limitations as far as mobility and performance in big games at big moments, right? We've seen the interceptions against New England and Buffalo, late game interceptions. I say make a clean sweep, take the financial pain, and start all over again.
I know you said that the team still likes Mike and he doesn't seem to have lost the locker room. Is there any splintering that you can notice? One of the things Crowder had told us this week was when you see a team up 17, the defense can't hold on to that lead, that while everyone might be kumbaya in public, you might start to get that splintering where the offense is saying, hey, defense, can you stop someone? The defense might be saying to the offense, hey, offense, can you maybe, rush for some yardage and stay on the field a little bit longer? You sense any kind of splintering?
I don't. But I'll tell you this. I did have a very interesting conversation with Jack Jones today. And so I went up to him, and, I like to do one-on-ones. I don't like to do group interviews. I like to talk to players one-on-one and establish a relationship. So I went up to Jack, and I said, Jack, just give me some football knowledge. What's your mindset in bouncing back in a game and in a season when you have the penalties that you had last game? And I said, I'm not going to write this. We're just talking. And he goes, no, you need to write this. So I was like, all right, Jack. And so He goes off on this long rant about how the game is built for the offense to succeed, and the calls aren't equal, and when the defensive player is just trying to keep up, he's going to get called. And he said, and Jack Jones is great. Jack Jones is a very stand-up guy. Remember what he said about Amon-Ra St. Brown during the joint practice? He cooked me. So Jack Jones is, and I knew Jack was going to be very open and honest about it, but he went on a nice rant, and then David Furones, my coworker at the Sun Sentinel, walked up, and Jack kept going, and we lingered too long. Strategically in a locker room, you want to have the story to yourself, and Barry Jackson noticed we were over there, so Barry Jackson came over, so it's going to be in the Herald and the Sentinel, damn it, but it won't be in the Palm Beach Post. But
Barry Jackson's a lurker. Let's all be honest. Barry Jackson's a lurker.
Always have to look over my shoulder for Barry. He moves like a cat. But Jack was very good. He was very open about the situation, and you can read about it in the Sun Sentinel tomorrow. David Furones will write it about which calls that Jack Jones thought were legit in the game and which he didn't think so. And he credited Hunter Renfrow from Carolina as being shrewd and knowing how to work the system to get the call. So Jack was very realistic, but Jack also kind of went off on the game and the way it's kind of rigged against defensive players.
There's part of, this entire situation where the Dolphins are in, Perk, that, even me, one of, somebody who's had this very skeptical view of everything that's been happening, I'd say it's also a little unlucky with the injuries as well. And I think Jack Jones is one of those guys they brought in, and they were hoping he would exceed the expectations set on him. And there's a couple other examples on the defense specifically. How would you grade how, some of these guys who were signed, whether off waivers, whether off the practice squad, how would you grade how the Dolphins have managed all the big injuries to the defense through 5 weeks?
Well, I'll say this, the roster construction and the planning was bad. And I give this is institutional failure. And that's what I said in the column, is that the institution has failed here because you didn't prepare for the cornerback situation properly, right? You knew that Jalen Ramsey wanted out. And so instead of drafting a cornerback in the 3rd or 4th round, you traded out of those rounds and traded up to get Jonah, and you left the cupboard bare at cornerback. And so, when Storm Duck and Cater get injured, you've got nothing left. You don't have a rookie. You don't have any vets. As far as the offensive line, well, you needed to build better depth. And that's biting you in the butt right now. You re-signed Liam Eichenberg, and he was injured. And Mike McDaniel tells us it's some kind of a chronic condition. Well, what was your plan? Like, you knew he wasn't going to take the field anytime soon. What was the plan? And so with a lot of these injuries, it's the management. I mean, it's the planning here that you didn't have a backup plan. And really, I go to just this whole philosophical change of we're going to win with youth and draftees instead of winning with vets and free agents. Okay, if you're going to win with youth and draftees, why the heck are you trading out of the 3rd and 4th round? And now you're going to rely on 5th, 6th, and 7th rounders? You basically made it a 2-person draft. Jonah in the second round and Kenneth Grant in the first round. Like, nobody's realistically thinking fifth, sixth, and seventh rounders are going to contribute as rookies. So, your philosophical change doesn't really jive with what you did on draft day. And I think it goes with the cornerback plan. Like, what was your plan at cornerback with Jalen Ramsey gone? What was your plan at tight end with Jonnu Smith gone? I just see a lot of these things as bad planning, and it's what's been happening in this whole 3+ year administration of Grier and McDaniel. It's not been good enough. I'll say this: Grier and McDaniel did a great job of amassing talent, but they just didn't deploy it correctly, and they didn't build enough backups, and now you're paying the price for it.
So all that being said, you give them any kind of puncher's chance Sunday about, I guess, coming back from a collapse against a team that shouldn't be able to come back against you with Bryce Young at quarterback at the 17-point deficit. Do you give them a chance Sunday to come out and make some sort of emphatic statement like, hey, we took one on the chin, but we're not going anywhere. We're still here. We're still playing. We're going to play some good football?
I do. Yeah. I definitely do. Now, I picked the Chargers to win 28-20, but I don't expect this team to fold. I've written this the last couple of years, and I believe it right now. I like the fighting spirit of this team. This team doesn't give up. They don't quit. They might not be very good, and they might make some boneheaded errors, but they don't quit. They don't point fingers. They haven't quit on Mike McDaniel. I like the competitiveness, the fighting spirit of this team. They just aren't very good, and the reason they aren't very good is because of Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. I don't expect Jack Jones to go out there and play like a Pro Bowl player, or Daniel Brunskill, or Keon Smith, or a lot of these other guys that have been thrust into these roles. They're busting their butt. They're doing the best they can. They're just not very good, and they're put in this position through bad organizational planning. So they do have a chance on Sunday. I definitely think they have a chance. And I think under McDaniel, I figured out this number today. I think they're 18-7 or something like that at home under McDaniel. So I definitely give them a chance, but I don't know that they're going to be good enough to beat the Chargers, who are also having their own injury issues at offensive line and running back like the Dolphins. So who knows what will happen? But I don't think that they're just going to get their butts kicked.
Perk, that offensive line might be the only one worse than the Dolphins coming in.
Exactly.
And I don't care. I think the Tua versus Herbert conversation is officially dead. Like that's never one that the Dolphins are going to feel like they won. But no matter what the situation is, Perk, it's always going to feel good to beat Justin Herbert, whether it's with Tua, whether it's with whoever. So even if this loss is, even if a win this Sunday, in the grand scheme of things is meaningless, go beat Justin Herbert if you can every single time.
Yeah. You don't want to keep hearing about that, do you? If Chris Grier or Mike McDaniel or anybody at this facility that, you made the wrong choice, you drafted the wrong guy. Yeah, you want Tua to stick it to Justin Herbert and so that you can say, see, like we didn't necessarily make the wrong choice. By the way, if I'm not mistaken, Tua is better in the playoffs than Herbert, right? Tua 0-1, Herbert 0-2. So there's that.
That's right. That's right.
It's an excellent stat to have in my arsenal there when I'm arguing for Tua.
Exactly.
That's a good one.
Exactly.
Read Chris Perkins' work in the Sun Sentinel. Make sure you have the Sun Sentinel app. Make sure you subscribe to the Sun Sentinel as well. Listen to Perk Sunday, Game Day Uncensored, right here on this very radio station with Solana and Tobin. Thank you, Perk.
All right, Solana, we'll talk Sunday.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.